So we're on air now. So this is gonna be the first of many podcasts to come. I think like sitting down and talking with somebody in this manner can be really beneficial for both people. This podcast is about sharing ideas, being authentic, and learning. And I was yesterday I was thinking of like what's a good name to go along with this podcast. And I spent a while trying to figure it out, and then I finally came across heart to heart when I was like looking up words on Urban Dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought the Heart to Heart podcast would be a good name. What do you think about that?
I think it's right on. Because normally we tend to speak to hear with our minds and communicate with our minds. I think that by creating this situation and making it a point to communicate from the heart to the heart, from heart to heart, it's more authentic, spontaneous, and yeah.
I don't know about you, but like, so I know you're older than me. You're in kind of a different part of your life in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I would at least imagine that when you were 22 like myself, you were a little bit more like self-conscious, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But I for one can find it hard to just be my real self. To be like humble with how I speak, and because it's like a show, like I want to I want to have people to have a good opinion of me, and I think that sometimes actually like degrades how I can communicate with people, because I'm not being my true authentic self. And so yeah, that's something that I'm wanting to work on with myself, and I think this podcast will hopefully help other people, anybody who listens to it,
Mm-hmm.
kind of do the same thing. But anyway, I just want to do like a little introduction to cause this is like the first like legit podcast like in this space.
Mm-hmm.
But this is really about you, because you're the one that's interesting here.
I think I don't think so. I think it's the interaction, the situation that is happening that we're both creating. Really, that's what triggers us to discover through the conversation. I end up finding myself to be as surprised with what I say sometimes as anybody else that is having a conversation, because to me it's more, as you were saying, like the point where you become self-conscious of how you're coming across. It's something that I have worked, not directly. I mean, I still have to work on it, because I feel I have the same insecurities that any human has. And but to me, is that I have approached it from another side. I've started to decondition parts of my constructed self, basically, to be able to allow the conductivity of something that permeates everything, something that it's a mystery that, some people call it truth, some people call it consciousness, some people call it. So I think that the more you uncondition yourself, you become a clearer vessel for that to flow through you.
Mm-hmm.
And as it does, when it amplifies when it's shared, and when there is receptivity, as you were saying at the beginning, like being heart to heart, where there is heart, where there's receptivity, and there's wonder, we both are wondering where this is gonna go. Like, I'm here and you said, like, yeah, we're on air. I was like, whoa. I wasn't really expecting to be in the air, but it's like, yes, we're in, and the situation is happening. So, and the fact that this could, through our mutual collaboration and this quest that we embark together to find out, to dive deeper into things, the situation is created, and you and me benefit, and perhaps the listener as well.
Well, I think for like you said, to like sit down and be on air and be like, well, kind of like it's like surprise, like that's spontaneous.
Yeah.
That's really spontaneous. Just on what was it, Monday morning?
Mm-hmm.
We went and got tea at Dover Tea. We're talking about the coming year of school, and then also like different student organizations that we're both a part of, and we'll get into those here in a little bit. But yeah, we're just getting tea, and then podcast comes up, and I'm like, yeah, Sebastian, when can we do a podcast? And you're like, Wednesday. And so here we are. It's Wednesday morning. It was August 23rd. Anyway, so you're okay with spontaneity. We're both here in the moment. Would you mind giving a little bit of background on yourself? You have a very interesting background, and the bits and pieces that I've heard about you, through you telling me, and then also through the grapevine, other people, kind of talking about your journey through life. I've just picked up that you've had a lot of experiences, and it really makes you an individual. You've had very individual experiences. It seems like you haven't like followed the herd in a lot of ways. You've really like trusted your heart. Maybe tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you've had some really incredible experiences from what I can tell. But would you mind just kind of like starting off like where you're from, and kind of talk about maybe some early life experiences that maybe stuck out for you?
Yes. I was born in Colombia, South America, and from my father, he was born in Chile, having quite a complex lineage from his side, and my mother, my grandmother, well, basically from my mother's side, it was more of very native Colombian descendants. So from an early age, my father was one of his. He was kind of a hippie in his time. He was more like an enthusiast for to working in a farm enthusiast, I would call him. He was very well off. Like, he was well off with his family and everything. He had the opportunity. He went to actually a good university and became a veterinarian. But he also didn't cope with society in many different ways. He wanted to have his little farm, his family. He holds his whole idea. He had this idea of what happiness was for him, and what he wanted. And he was a fighter. He is a fighter. He's a person that would relentlessly start from nothing to pursue what he envisioned. And he would be, so he had the opportunity be either a businessman or whatever, but he decided to. I mean, his passion was farms and animals and having as many variety of animals as he wanted, and then my mom was very much in love with him, and she was a woman of sacrifice. She was a woman of that actually ended up um, sacrificing herself and putting herself in the line to for her kids, for her family. You know, she would follow my dad to the, you know, most difficult corners, because we went through very difficult times, because at some point the whole economic situation in third world countries was making it very difficult for people that live off the farms, of the land, to make a living. So there were times that we were like very, you know, in situations where we might even didn't have that much to eat and things like that. So I would have to, like, sometimes even before going to school, milk a cow to have the milk to make our hot chocolate in the mornings with eggs and things like that. We would have to, you know, I would work. And so for the most part, I grew up, I mean, in a certain sense, you know, I was very lucky to grow up and have every single meal with my parents and with my family up to the age of like 17. So I was, you know, there was a great family dynamics. You know, I was really acquainted with the dynamics of my family. But I was also very rebellious from very early age. I felt that there was this thing in me that allowed me to distinguish patterns, and it made me, when I applied that capacity towards in a rational way to the outside world, I was able to detect certain patterns. So I was very, very, very cunning in many ways. So, for example, things that I did, you know, so yeah, I mean, to me, one of the areas that I was like in school, I was very much, if something didn't interest me, I wouldn't just absorb, you know, like take it for what it was, like face value. I was just like really go into it, or if I was not interested, I will cheat right on, you know. So that part of my life of, you know, when I was growing up, I was also very much secluded from many people because we lived in a farm and it was kind of far away from so I had spent a long time to creating my own, you know, like I made my own ways of distraction, and I would, you know, like I would build tree houses, and I would build things, and, you know, very active in that area. But then when it, you know, what I was saying about perceiving patterns, I started to recognize the outside world, what was necessary for me to succeed, and I started applying and this very linear, very linear directed kind of forward thinking that started to allow me to be success from allow me success in the world relatively easy, you know. And then it happened that that situation of living in Colombia came to a very, very difficult, as far as like there was violence going around, that there was uncertainty in many different ways, political instability and all that. And most of my mother's family lived in the US. So we immigrated to the United States with my whole family. And it was a transition. It was a big transition. I was about 17, 18. And yeah, I was, again, we came with one hand in front and one hand in the back, basically, like completely having nothing, starting from zero again. And we had already started from zero like twice in our lives, so we had like difficult as a family. But then being here in the United States, I was very focused of what I needed and what I needed to become, and I started learning English even before I learned English before coming here, and just started practicing when I was, interacting with people. And throughout that time, school was just a means for me to really get to soak what is it that I was going to do here in the United States. And it was the opportunity, was this huge opportunity. The American dream was to me like, yeah, I'm gonna make it happen. And then I went through university. I went for business administration and international business. And but at the same time, even before that, I was already working with logistics, with import and export, living in Miami, and that was a very big field. And I started working with Koreans, which are people that are very, very, they're work oriented and workaholics. So if you provided the results, no matter who you were, you would be able to escalate, to move fast. And my charisma and my results were proving that. So I was, at the same time that I was going to school, I was climbing the ladder very fast. So I was very, very successful in that sense. And so I was applying every business and knowledge that I was gaining from school directly in hands, because I was already a manager by the time that I was in school. And then just like 6 months before graduating, I went to work with a multinational corporation, Carnival Cruise Lines. I worked as a pricing analyst, and basically they had this very rudimentary. You might think that these big companies have great technology or everything, but they did not. They were very rudimentary the way they were pricing their certain things, like the airfares and transportation things. They were just, it's kind of complex to go into that route, but basically I was hired, and I came up with this system that would allow them to price more accordingly certain things, and that created a great success. And
was that a computer-based system?
Yes, computer-based system. So but it was mainly through databases. So it's just manipulating databases in a way in which would benefit the would give approximate estimates of what is the price out there and what is the price that they were giving. So but then it was, by that time I was really, like I felt like I was making it, like I was on top of the world. Like I could predict within the next 10 years what I will be, how much I will be making. I figured that within the next 5 years I would be making $100,000 a year. Within the next 10 years I would be in a vice presidential post. Rank, and making great amount of money. By the time I had already had my first business, I had a business before that, and I knew it was kind of very linear, very predictable, because once you start in the corporate career, you cannot predict that you're how young you are compared with the success and how your position, it really translates into that. But it was linear, it was empty. There was this one of these circumstances when I came one day, and for this company there were people. I was in the air, for cruise ships. They have this thing where, let's say you go to the website of the cruise ship and you live, let's say here in Asheville, and you want to go on a cruise, and the nearest port is Charleston. So they would make it easier for you. They would give you, the airfare, so you would buy everything through Carnival Cruise Lines, the airfare to get from here to Charleston, and then the price for the cruise. So that area of the corporate part of taking care of that transportation, those logistics, was where I was working, and the department that I was with the finances, helping with the finances. So, um, and then there were people there that had been working, because in the older days, this process required, it was a floor of like 100 people, and these were people that were doing air reservations. They were getting in touch with the airlines, basically in the 90s and the 80s, where there were no computers and not such a things as like kayak and Expedia or something like that. In those days, it was mainly manual and over the phone. So these people, so there was a floor full of these people, and they had been working there for years and years, 20, 30 years. These were people that didn't know anything else what to do. But because of the company, because of the whole corporate mentality, they decided these people were a liability, a cost. These were 100 people that you would have to pension, you would have to continue paying, and really it didn't pay off. So what they did is, one day in the morning, they redirected. This floor was in the fourth floor or something. Well, they kind of like made a sign, made everybody in that floor go to the third floor, and basically there were people in desk and saying like, yeah, please come and meet with this person. Basically, they laid out a full floor of people all at once.
Wow.
And so that told me, like basically at the end in this corporate and working with finance and everything, you get to know, you get to see that really everything is quantified in numbers. Everything you become a number, you become an asset or a liability. You become a commodity. You're not seen for your humanity. There's no way in which you're worth, you're cared for. The people that actually make those decisions, the higher you move, the more alienated they are from the humanity of other people, how their decisions impact even their employees, not even thinking about the environment, not even thinking about the society as a whole, this whole ecosystem, this whole world. So these people were just making narrow-minded decision, because that's where in those being in those hierarchy ranks, these people become just narrow-minded, looking for the end result, because everything depends of reporting profits at the end of the fiscal year, because that's what makes the stock market, is the stock market value of one of these big companies go up, is when you show return on investment, on return to your shareholders. When you present the profit to your shareholders, that's when the stock goes up. So basically it all goes down to that little bottom line. Everything is about lifting, making that bottom line not negative and positive all the time. So, and I was in this, it's this huge ass building, beautiful, like you see the cruise, Carnival Cruise Lines has like multi-billion-dollar
That's like
ships.
The only cruise line that I know of.
Yeah.
It's Carnival Cruise Line. I mean, they've had commercials, and yeah, I'm sure they dock off all around the world. Yeah, it's huge company.
It's a big company, and they also have like, not only they have cruise lines, but they have like Holland America, and they have like 3 more or 4 more. There's even a line of private jets that and that's where I was working in corporate. But then these people, being so narrow-minded and not caring, it was just giving me this. I couldn't perceive it, and I at the time, I had a friend, and she was a very intuitive. She was my best friend. We've been together friends for a long time, and she was very intuitive of things, and then I started to become receptive. These things started to hit into my heart. These things started to erode that alienation that I was forming, that cross that I was forming around, to be the blinders kind of were coming off, and I was becoming very receptive to this situation.
Well, I think that makes you really unique, because I think many of us could get into that kind of state of corporate rat race,
Mm-hmm.
and we see the rats racing next to us, and we're like, I gotta win. You know, I gotta go. I gotta make sure I get to the top before somebody fires me, so I can fire them. You know, but that's just, I think that's a very, very unique kind of characteristic of your like how you dealt with this. Is you became aware. You were, you know, you noticed those subtleties, and those subtleties like opened your eyes, and then you're like, you know, that's, I mean, how do you think that yeah, I mean, how do you think you're different in that way? Are you more of a conscious person? Are you more reflective? Are you more caring? Because there's always those fingers getting pointed at, you know.
It's very mysterious, you know.
Yeah.
There's one thing that there is a mystery going all around us, and sometimes looking back, I don't think I have it. I'm not special at all. I mean, and sometimes looking back, what I'm saying is that looking back, I see that it was all an act of grace, you know. And it all narrows down. One thing that I did not mention about my childhood, I grew up Catholic. We didn't go to the church oftenly, but ever since a very early age, I had this thing for love, for God, you know, like, had this love. At some point I wanted to be a priest. I was like, yeah, I mean, it just the peace and God itself to me was something felt. And I would talk to him, you know. I was taught to pray at night, and I would take it very serious. There was not a night I would go to sleep without praying. And I would talk to God in a way that it was, you know, like I would give some prayers, and then I would talk to him. And the main thing that I asked him, I mean, this is one of the things that I would ask him, is, God, you know, help me to be happy. I want to be happy. You know, show me happiness. And here's the disclaimer. Here it is. Like, watch out for what you pray for, because you're gonna get it. You know, I think that's what happens. You know, really, consciousness comes from, you know, happiness comes from consciousness, and consciousness is not easy. You know, recognizing this thing, it creates hurdles for yourself. So at that point, when I was becoming very receptive, so it's not that I had anything special. I was like any other human being, that we can hear that little voice in us, because even these higher CEOs, they must hear it very faintly, but they will hear it. You know, that voice that tells, you know, is what you're doing right? Is that what you're doing? How is it affecting the whole world? But then, yeah, we tend to not look at that part, because we have our self-care intentions, you know, me first in the world. But then at that point, when all that was happening, you know, I had this sports car, and one day I was just visiting my family, and I was fooling myself. It was this brand new car, and it was like the car that I always wanted. And I took, you know, in where they lived, to get back and forth to them, you know, I would use the turnpike, which is this huge highway, and it was like 10 p.m. at night or something. And I was full of myself. I was really full of myself, and I was like, damn, this damn car, and then there's this other car, this other very fast car comes around me, and it kind of like starts racing with me. And I'm like, okay, let's race. And I start going faster and faster in this highway, you know, complete straight thing. And I remember being in, this car has six shift in sixth gear going. The speedometer was probably about 140 miles an hour, and we were going on, one lane in between. Basically, it was like 4-lane road, but there was a 1 lane in between. And I was going, going so fast that everything was just swing, going right about me, like the trees were moving so fast, everything became kind of this tunnel vision because it was going so fast. It was like, wow. And then I see a car that is going in that middle lane road, and I was like, okay, no problem. We're going. I'm about to be like, damn, how long is this gonna be? And then this car happens to switch into my lane at that speed, and then so at that point I couldn't brake. I knew that if I swerved too hard, I was just gonna come off. But then I decided, either I hit him in the back and I killed him, or I sacrificed myself. So I decided in that moment to swerve and brake, and then it starts spinning. And in that moment, I feel something embracing me, like a big angel. Like, just imagine, like, I know it sounds weird, but I'm not saying that this is factual. I'm just saying that this is how I felt in that moment. Like, the only recollection of that moment, I felt like something, this big wings were embracing me. And I spin in a very weird way, go like to the farthest, to the middle of the highway, but then I continue spinning at that speed and come off on the side of the road, and I hit a palm tree. But coincidentally enough, I hit the palm tree with the back of my car. So all of the impact was absorbed, and the palm tree comes all the way from the back to almost like touching my front seat. If it would have been the difference of a second, that palm tree would have been even on my side. If it would have hit me on the side, I would have been completely wrapped around that tree. But I came out of that with one single scratch in my finger. And in that moment, I was, I come out of this car, and I watch this, the people the band that it was a couple that they had moved into my lane. They come out, and I'm in this state of just like awareness and shock. Like, this is like, whoa, I'm alive. And all I care was for them. I care. It's like, are you okay? Are you guys okay? But they were concerned about me, but I was concerned about them. And it was a very, very wonderful thing, because I felt a lot of love for them in that moment. A lot of, I was just overwhelmed. Of great. I was very grateful that I didn't kill them, or that I didn't create the damage that could have happened. And then so they leave, and well, they after that accident, then things start shifting very fast, because in that moment the question was, okay, if you were to die in that moment, if that was the moment that I was supposed to go, what did I accomplish? So I look back and I see like this linear perspective on life. Yeah, you could have accumulated these things, but these things were nothing. You're not taking this to the grave. You haven't really grown. You haven't seen. And at that moment, I knew that I was already perceiving this mystery that is going around us. And I wondered, there's something bigger here. There's depth in everything. And at that moment, I'm also, listening to Bob and smoking weed on a religious basis. Like, me and my friend, we would smoke and have these beautiful conversations. And in that moment, I hear this song. I mean, every song from Bob is a message in any way, but a call for awakening. But there's this one specific song called War, and that cracks the egg for me. In that moment, that song made it all, like, it all connected. It all became, it revealed to me. Like, I like I could say, like, this is what I was missing. That was the moment when everything, and it became, and then 6 months later, I drop out of everything. I save about $20,000 and sell everything that I have. And by this time, I was already living and in love with my friend. We became lovers. We had this very religious experiences through psychedelics. We were growing mushrooms and eating them in this, and we had these sacred experiences that we both awakened at the same time.
Was that the first time you were introduced to psychedelics?
Yeah. It was when I was growing them. That's how I was introduced to them. And and then I went traveling around the world, and I went seeking for wisdom everywhere and experiences. And I traveled for a year. But so as I was saying, when I was younger, I think that it all narrows down to that. It just seems that, and then the idea of God changed, or not changed, or was more revealed, was deeper than what my mind could construct. Then there's just divineness everywhere, godliness around us, there's a beautiful saying that says, in a house of an atheist, he had this sign that says, God is nowhere.
Were you saying an atheist?
Yeah, an atheist, yes. He had it in his house. This is a beautiful story. He has this because he was an atheist and very proud, and he felt like a sign like this would instigate people to talk about God, and he would be like, he was very logical and very. But then one day he was sitting with his baby on his lap, and the baby was learning to read, and the baby starts reading in loud voice the sign, and it says, God is now here, and then that moment the atheist shifts his whole mentality. It was like a revealing because of the innocence of the child and how he read it. It became from being nowhere. Now, if you put the words together, it will translate now here. So being in the present moment is how you experience God. So that became my quest, in the same sense, my longing, everything, like when I was little, and this is kind of like, I've heard recently about how when you ask for something to the universe, it's like, let's say you ask for courage. It's not that the universe is going to give you courage. The universe is going to give you the situation for you to gather courage. So that's why I say be careful with what you ask, because you're going to get it. It's the act of manifestation. And me asking for happiness was actually, from all those early age, and that really condensed intention to be happy allowed, I think it contributed with being in a state of surrender and let go, and allowed that break that happened within me, so that I could allow what was happening, this recognizing that I'm part of it, that I'm it, as being a conscious manifestation of this mystery within this realm. So it was through me, and it's through all of us, that it manifested, whether we realize it or not. But it takes more of that surrender, to be receptive, to get that message. That little thing is just about listening and being in that state of receptivity. And I think that's what it created to me.
Yeah, that stuck out to me too, kind of like how open you were, kind of just to when you're talking about that, that undercurrent of energy, that God, like when you're saying you were a child and you were praying, you'd have conversations. There's some type of sounds like some type of kind of like dialogue. So I think that takes a certain level of letting go for you at that age. Like maybe that's innately you were able to do that. When I was a young kid, I used to have really bad trouble sleeping, and I would sit in bed at night and I'd say, just like, God, just let me sleep. Just like, let me sleep right now. I really want to go to sleep. I really want to go to sleep. I really want to go to sleep. And looking back on that now, it was a very like rigid thing to be doing and asking for. I wasn't actually opening myself up. I was actually closing myself off by just not letting go. Anyway, that's just something that stuck out to me. Also, have you ever heard about kind of, I guess it's like a saying, like a plumber walks into a house and he like thinks like, where are the pipes? Where's the drainage? How does the flow of water go out to the house? A carpenter comes into the house and says, that linoleum needs to be redone. This wall's warped. This isn't good infrastructure. And a priest walks into a house and he sees God. Which to me is kind of that undercurrent of love. That's at least what my understanding at this point in my life. But I know it's also really hard to put into words, and trying to intellectualize it doesn't seem to help. But thank you so much for sharing that part of your life story. Are you good to keep going, or do you want to take a break?
I continue going.
Okay.
Because I think that I feel the connection is important. Like being in this atmosphere as without a break, I think is more beneficial. I mean, this is a break for me. This is the moment where I was saying that by being connected and being it's just the channeling of and discovering together through the conversation, and this is relaxing and wonderful. So I don't need to take any other break.
Heck yeah. I'm glad you feel comfortable.
Yeah, no idea.
I'm not like overbearing. Sebastian, talk to me.
Not at all.
Do you need any water? I got some water.
Also got some water. I got some water. Thanks.
Whew. Yeah, what a day. It's like starting back to school like this. Yeah. And it every time I come back to school, I realize like, wow, school really like focuses me. Kind of like that discipline that I need. I thrive off of that discipline. And so kind of starting back to school just reminded me of that. It's like, where's my discipline been? I've been, throughout the summer, I've had plenty evenings when I could have created something. I could have worked on a project. And instead, I'm like, oh, I need this rest. It's like, I didn't need that rest. It was an excuse. It was like a way to in a way protect myself and be like, go the easy route, Konrad. Don't go on the uphill battle. Just go downhill. And so, I'd go to sleep early, and I'd get 9 hours of sleep, and then I'd go back to work on the farm the next day. And although I love working out at the farm in Mills River, it's not a job that necessarily disciplines me. With all the years that I've done it now, this was my 6th year, it's become so easy that I've almost begun to lose the meaning behind the work that I do. And I think the meaning behind the work that I do out there is to do things at a level of perfection. That even though customers of the farmers markets may never come and see what our tomatoes look like out of the farm, that doesn't mean the tomatoes shouldn't all be laid out perfectly, have an even coating of straw between the rows. Strings holding up the tomatoes should be spaced evenly apart. I think that type of discipline is like the most incredible thing ever. And this is just something that I'm really learning about recently. It's like I never even used the word discipline more recently. Until more recently. But, kind of back to school and discipline, we're both a part of a club called Seeds of Change. I would say you're the one who really got the ball rolling, you and Alice. And so Seeds of Change. So Sebastian and Alice pretty much started this club. It's a think tank. Is kind of how it's marketed to people. But it's a think tank to come up with entrepreneurial solutions to world problems. And Sebastian has this concept, this business structure called Awareness Corp. And so Awareness Corp has been a major focus of the Seeds of Change think tank. And so before we get into Awareness Corp and more about Seeds of Change, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about discipline, because I've been on this whole discipline kick. Next Tuesday, our first meeting happens, I'm going to do a presentation. And I just told Alice about this yesterday. I'm not sure if she mentioned it to you. But it's going to be on how to turn our dreams, being Awareness Corp, how to turn that into realization through envisioning what the end goal is, and then being able to motivate ourselves to reach that goal. I have a meeting set up. I just got this meeting set up yesterday with the person who is like in charge of the psychological health of like students here on campus, over at the health and wellness services building down the road. And there's a lot of students here on campus who take medications to help them focus and study. There's a lot of students here on campus who have psychological issues. And there's just something not quite right about that, in my opinion. even though I'm not saying any of these people aren't, like I'm sure they're getting help from the school, but I'm more interested in seeing how these students can help themselves and help to not use medications, not feel insignificant, boost their confidence. So I've got this meeting with this member of the health and wellness services here on campus, and I plan to go and talk to him about how he does or he doesn't think discipline of the mind could be a major help for students here on campus. Now, I think it's a touchy subject in a way to be like, all right, well, this student has problems focusing. Well, that means they need to do something about it. They're the ones who are in the driver's seat here, so they should realize they're going to have problems focusing, and at night sit down and study. And after 30 minutes of studying, when they start feeling like, oh, I got to get up and I got to do something else, I've been doing this for a while, it's like, no, sit back down and study for another 30 minutes. So anyway, I'm really interested in how discipline of the mind could help students here on campus. That's why I'm going and talking to the health and wellness person, because I'm just interested what he has to say to that. Because there's I don't really want to go into that too much further. I want to do a podcast on my conversation with him and kind of how he sees the well-being of students here on campus. I want to hear from him if he thinks it's more internal or external influences that are driving students to feel like they need medications or truly need medications. So yeah, I don't want to go too much further into that. But for Seeds of Change, I'm really excited for this coming year, because there's a really brilliant group of students that are in this think tank. And the concept of Awareness Corp, which we should go into now, has been, I think, communicated pretty clearly to most of the members of Seeds of Change. Yeah. So would you like to talk about Awareness Corp, or would you rather me kind of give a brief introduction?
I would say let's touch a little bit about it, but Awareness Corp should be another podcast in it of itself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very much interested on the question that you ask, as far as that you raise within yourself about discipline and about what's happening here in UNCA and all across United States, essentially, because that's the price we're paying. That's the suffering we're paying for being the best well off in this whole world. I've been wondering or perceiving this for a while, as far as if you take the numbers of how many people there are in the world, there's 7 billion people in this world. Out of those 7 billion people, United States, I think, is like the 10% or something like that of this population. And if you take all the developed nations, they probably account for like 20% of it. So that would mean that being very, and not to go in depth, I mean, this is something that I could talk about in we can talk about and delve deeper into another conversation, another podcast perhaps as well, is the fact that being very generous, very, very generous, there's already 4 billion people in the world out of the 7 billion. Let's say if we say that 3 billion of them are well off, or like have enough money to at least, let's say out of those 7 billion, a billion are well off, 2 billions have something to eat. There's 4 billion people in this world that live in absolute poverty and suffering. So these are 40 billion people, and not many people realize. I mean, you have to Google billion to see the number, how many zeros there are in there, to recognize that there's that amount of souls, individuals, humans like you and me that feel, that sense, that suffering, that for them life is hell. Of course, because of that, that means that the suffering that we get for being the well-off is not outer there. It's not outer as much. It's more inside our minds. It's what we create, is the anxieties. And how do we create it? Is because, again, if we are a conscious manifestation of the mystery that underlies everything, then that means that we also have power in a certain level. We have that power that some people refer to as the law of attraction, or let's not even call it any metaphysical BS. Let's just go with the fact that, just consider the fact that if 200 or 500 years ago you saw a flying object, you would be like, somebody coming out of a flying object would be like, this is God. I mean, now we have planes, we have helicopters, we have this technology, this ability to, like an iPhone, these are like sorcerers. Like, we would be sorcerers if we were to be 200 years ago or something like that. So we have this technology that means that we can create out of nothing. I mean, for us, flying in the air was impossible, but we made it happen because we decided. So anything we decide, we create. So that means, to me, and I've heard it expressed in this way, it's like we have a ray gun. We have the power. And the point is, where do you point that laser gun at? So if you point that laser gun towards your negativity, and towards limitations, and towards being a victim in this world, you're in hell inside your mind. You're in anxiety. You're in constant anxiety because there is so much overwhelming. Everything, society is crazy. Not many people realize that. People think that it's themselves that are not fitting with it. But the thing is, like, what we have agreed to create out there is something artificial. Mm-hmm. And we're especially in university, is when we try to make these decisions how we're going to fit into that society. And so it creates a great amount of anxiety. And then some people are going to see the bright side, very few. Some people are going to see the negative side. Some people are going to feel like, there's every semester there's a graduation, and there's thousands of, and within a school is like hundreds of people that are graduating, and then multiply that for how many universities in the United States. Mm-hmm. Is anxiety. Population is growing. There's more and more competition. People are becoming more and more anxious. So yes, it's easier to see the darker side. It's easier to see the dark side in their mind. So yeah, if you point that ray gun towards negativity, and if you see, for example, people that are negative, they tend to attract negativity. It's like, oh, this thing is not gonna work out. My car is not working. My car is a piece of shit, or something. And then their car breaks down. Their car, something happens, and just they just start attracting that. It's because they're manifesting it through that power that they have. There's other people that focus on the positive, and they're just geared towards that being positive, and things happen to them. Good, beneficial things happen to them, but because of one sense of another, they're well off to be able to focus on the positive. But then the greater majority, or a great part of it, also happen to have that gun and don't know what to point it at. So basically they have this vacuum. There is this vacuum of meaning where they don't know what to do. So when you're not using that gun to either attract positive or negative, either to create negative or positive, you're in the state where you feel like something is lacking within you. There's no meaning, there's this. So then you try to find meaning and try to distract yourself either through television, or Netflix, or the internet, or whatever, drugs, or whatever fills that, alcohol, whatever fills that void. And I think that that's one of the major aspects of, is that people don't realize they have that power to create. And it's also because they don't have anything that drives them towards using that power towards something, something that they believe in. Yes, there's less and less for example, religion has experienced a great diminishment in numbers. Not many people are buying that bullshit anymore, because they realize it was just a powerhouse, manipulating people in many ways. Same thing with politics. Many people are dropping out of that. But yet, what I have realized is that yes, they have removed themselves from those things, but yet they have not created the new thing. They don't create anything. Before as again, 200, well, all this rush of technology was happening, all like inventing the new plane, making things happen. People were, they seemed to be like making, for example, constructing highways, constructing the railroad. People were invested. They could invest their life. This will be my mission in my life. I'm gonna make this railroad happen. I'm gonna make this thing happen, or this company, or the company of my father. I'm gonna make it be. And but then now we happen to be. This is truly an utopia. Basically, we have created all the comforts we can have. We have created all the things. I mean, at this point, it's difficult to see. Okay, what else there is to be invented? Now, what's the next thing to have the iPhone become thinner and thinner? Is that going to be your life purpose, your life meaning? Because there's really nothing. I mean, we have become a specialized. Now the only way is to go to become a specialized about smaller and smaller things.
The people making that smaller iPhone might be the happiest because they can devote themselves. Yes, they're all their time in their day. It's just like, I'm gonna make that iPhone smaller.
Yes,
it's gonna be paper thin.
Totally. So that's what happens. People, there's nothing else to be invented in certain ways. There's really not that much. It's not that obvious. Where do you fit? So because of that, people don't invest themselves in nothing. So they're basically diluting themselves with entertainment, and they just kind of flow through life. And that's where
it's a funky time.
Yes, it is a
really funky time. It's like it's a time of transition for us all. Like up until just like a few generations ago, it seems like just human reproduction was such a key point of our existence. To raise this idea of a family, and you work hard, and the husband and the wife, that those partners, they don't have to really love each other that much, because it's kind of a job what they're doing. They've got to reproduce, and they got to have food on the table somehow. And then fast forward to now, it's like, shoot, we know so much. we know the population of the planet so large, and it's like, you know, is having children really that important right now? I think deep down we know it's not the major focus of things, at least where we are right now in the United States. But yeah, it's like where's that focus gonna lead us now? Mm-hmm. You know, I would hope it's to development of ourselves, to make each member of society, to make them become the change that they wish to see in the world. Mm-hmm. And it's, you know, just like, I think that's where we're headed. That's from what I can tell, that just makes the most sense, because now we're not just about population growth, we're about like maintaining this global ecosystem, which we've become so aware of. You know, it's like when we throw some trash in the water, it's like we know it where it collects in the ocean. Mm-hmm. And when we put pollutants into the sky, we know it affects our ozone, you know, and our atmosphere like that. So yeah, we become really aware really quickly on a broad scale. And we've still got so much room to grow. So much room to grow. But yeah, it's this time of transition, and it's just, you know, what a trip just to be like sitting here with you right now and be able to at least partially kind of have an understanding of like what's going on in the whole world right now. You know, we're so far past that time period of being like, oh yeah, only savages live in Australia. You know, it's like, oh yeah, those people over there, they believe in the wrong God. Mm-hmm. You know, those people over there, they want to, you know, we have to destroy them before they destroy us. It's like, you know, all those like weird like fantasies almost are, you know, it's like through the door. Like I'm on Google Earth, I'm like, they got houses in Australia that look just the same as ours. Everybody on Earth wants to prosper and just live well. Yes. You know, there's always those people that are in positions of extreme power that I think like give kind of a bad name to the human race, because they just do absurd things that don't really help a lot of people. It's more for themselves. But you know, yeah, just what a trip.
Yes.
You know,
I would call it a crunching time. It is crunching time.
It's crunch time.
Yeah, crunch time. Seriously, I mean, in so many ways, you know, that experience that all these people are having, that emptiness they're having, it's putting them, we are in a global scale, we are at this cross points. Like, we're at this very delicate state. We either make it or we break it, you know? And at the same time, in the same thing as consciousness, you know, to these people, most of these people, all the factors throughout life is pushing them towards either you go in, you know, you feel that void. So either you go into that void and find out yourself, basically. So you start to become receptive to another kind of understanding, a deeper understanding, basically going inside your head and understand the pattern that is happening, or you go out and do something, you know, you become either positive. And then you have people like you know, these motivational speakers that talk and they really gear you towards thinking positive and all that stuff. So either you take the ranks of your life and outside, you know, devote to something, or inside. But then for most of the or numb yourself through drugs or whatever to, you know, to bypass all that questioning. Mm-hmm. And that's where it's, you know, that's where it is, you know, people are pushed to the border. So most of these people don't know what to do. And so what I'm going is that then we're forced to understand. But people think, you know, like where you were, that's the bridge that I want to make between when you were mentioning about discipline. It's that discipline is not possible, that's not truly possible and truly meaningful if it doesn't come from within. Mm-hmm. Discipline that is imposed from the outside in a certain way is meaningless. yes, it will last you like, a determination to go to the gym and first January 1st, It's like that. It's just very short lived. You go and you try, you buy your membership and you say like, oh, I'm gonna work out and do this thing.
Yeah, it's working out for the people. It's like working out for the other people at the gym when you do it like that. Yes. Because it's like they see I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm working out. I'm getting buff. It's a week later. It's like, I don't know. Nobody's telling me to go work out.
Yeah, so
it's like that's got to come from the inside.
From the inside. So that's what happened. This true discipline comes from the inside, and it's not also completely. We have also wrongly been taught that discipline is also about seeking an end result or achieving. Sometimes discipline is also about letting go. If you see, one of the things that people have a greater difficulty with is to sit down quietly for a few minutes. I'm not saying meditation, because that's just sit quietly, and you'll find that people have a great problem with that. Mm-hmm. Their mind starts going berserk. And they start like questioning things, and they start like, what's going on? Untamed. Yeah. So even that, just not doing something, is something that we cannot do, that we find it difficult to do. So first comes the understanding, I think, like to really have the drive to try to understand what's happening within ourselves. Try to see that our mind is just moves in a cyclical way. It's a circle, where the same thoughts are recreated constantly. If you start paying attention, if you were to write down your thoughts, you will realize that you think kind of the same thoughts always. There is a chain on the thoughts that you think, or the perspectives that you have. And these perspectives, you start realizing that these thoughts maybe are not yours. Maybe these were kind of things that you had received due to your upbringing, or through the media, or the influence that you have had. But these are the imprint. This imprint is basically what's creating your reality. So understanding those patterns, understanding your own mind, is what's really gonna free you up, giving those spaces, so that true discipline can come. Because in that moment, once you understand, once you taste that freedom from certain patterns, then you can be motivated towards seeking more freedom. Freedom becomes this elixir that drives you towards something. Oh, there is not this perspective of just achieving something in the outside to be happy. You can also go inwards and be happy if you work on yourself, if you understand yourself. So if you're happy, by that means, by trying, by creating that freedom within you, then things in the outside flow easier. Then you're able to create things in an easier way, because you're not constrained by your inhibitions and your footprint. More and more you're becoming a clear vessel, an empty vessel, that through which creativity flows through you. And that creativity in itself becomes self-empowering. Once you're creative and once you're creating things, that creativity happens. But then we also need to understand, as you were saying before, like, energy is not constant. There's not really anything constant in this world. Even if you trace a line in this universe, that line, you will go farther and farther on a straight line. If you trace a straight line, given the fact that the universe is infinite, this straight line at some point is going to start curving, because the universe curves. Basically, there's nothing really straight in this world. So what I'm saying is that we also go, energy needs to go up and down. It goes through cycles. And in the same way, sometimes we become creative and we need that, but we also sometimes need, as you were saying in the summer, sometimes to be not disciplined. And that in itself is something that is already recharging our batteries, sort of kind of a sense, to be able to go out there and then
Yeah,
allow
right.
that creativity to happen. And the fact, I don't know what's first, the chicken or the egg, but in a certain sense, maybe perhaps the fact that you envision university to be your creative time, perhaps in another way you also perceive the summer to be, subconsciously perceived it to be the time that you needed to recharge those batteries, to be a little too loose in that area. And that is a sort of discipline as well, because in that sense, it takes a discipline to accept that.
I think it's hard for me though when I do go into that phase of like, this is rest, this is me time. I tend to get a little like absorbed in that, and I don't know, maybe it's just me being kind of scared or something, because I'm like, I don't want to lose my drive, I don't want to lose my discipline at university, you know. And so I think that sure, I can have that time to take the summer off, but it should still be a conscious decision, which that's my issue with my past summer, that I just an improvement that could have been made there, is that those nights that I was just, I'm gonna go sleep early, I'm gonna binge TV, those nights, it wasn't like a conscious decision. It was more of me just not wanting to be present. And this, that's alcohol, it's Netflix, that's all these different things that we can like distract ourselves with, are really like scapegoats, like ways to let up on ourselves and not hold ourselves responsible for our own actions.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think like you said, awareness court can be another
That's the thing.
day.
That's where well, I mean, oh, you said another day. Okay.
I mean, whatever you want to do. I just think this is a really great conversation to be having.
Yes. Well, what I was gonna connect that is that, as I was talking about the raygun and the creativity and the emptiness, is that's where awareness comes into play, because we need to, instead of like, whereas before is outdated and is actually stupid in my perspective, to have an ideology, to have a belief system, to buy into a candidate's promises, or a CEO's promises of something.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for us to take charge of this. And the technology is coming. The technology is actually there. Everything is there for us to be able to find our own motivation and find out things that really motivate us to do something, So, as I was saying about the ray gun, if we show people that they can there will be a matrix that will be able to support something, whatever they want to do, then they will do it because they enjoy it. So right now there is a gap between what can I do and what will allow me to survive, and people try to merge those two in a certain way in which they both work. So basically they end up sacrificing one. What I'm saying is that people decide, maybe being an artist doesn't pay, so I'm not going to be an artist, I'm going to be a businessman, and they're going to go into business and they're going to do this, and then they realize, but 13-20 years down the road, they're not happy with the life that they're living. They're just stuck in this job and they're not motivated. So because there is a gap between how do you create something, which is entrepreneurialism. How do you create something which you would enjoy doing and you would be happy doing it every day, to wake up in the morning and do something, And what happens is, like, there's a restriction of power, of resources, and these banks, and accessing the capital to start that is difficult, it's risky, there's too much risk, there's fear, this culture is of fear. So there's too much fear that doesn't allow you to be who you, or allow you even to think. You don't even want to think what you do, what would you like to do to be happy. Because if you know, like most of people would know that if they start allowing that to happen, they would be cataloged as the dreamers. Oh, or they would feel like at some point they will realize how unhappy they are. So they prefer to numb themselves in order to consider that there's other things that they could be doing which make them happier. So, and then they're not really exercising that ray gun. They have the power to create things, beautiful things, impactful things in the world. But they're not using it, and because they're not using it, they feel this emptiness within them, or they use it in the wrong way, or in either the positive or the negative way. In the positive, yes, they might do something, like create a charity and do this, but it would be just like putting little band-aids into this huge crater that is becoming bigger and bigger worldwide. So if we allow people to find something that they love, something that they would enjoy, again, drifting away from ideologies or anything, creating a matrix that will be able to support, saying, okay, here is your free ticket to do what inspires you, to do something that you would like to do, something that is unifiable or unifying, something that is sustainable, meaning that you can derive your income and your livelihood, and something that you enjoy doing. If you get those three ingredients together, you will be happier at a different level. You might not be a rich right away, but you will be successful, because you will be successful at the inner level and the outer level, which at the same time is opening you up to different things. It's opening you up to, okay, that means that I can go within myself because I am happy, because I am doing what I like to do. Then I can go in myself and say, I'm not afraid of going in and looking that, yeah, my life is pretty pleasable, because I'm doing what I enjoy to do. Oh, let me be, people become more open-minded. People will become more, embracive of the reality of the world, because they don't need to keep those, because in a certain way it takes more effort to keep those blinders. All their energy is focused to keep on those blinders, because they don't want to see the whole thing, the whole picture. But as you realize that, as you become invested in something that you enjoy to do, something that is unifying, and something that is creative and creating an impact in this world, then you're exercising that ray gun, and then you have the luxury, whether you want it or not, to take off those blinders. So and that's when true motivation happens, and that's where getting those ray guns to synchronize, we will be creating a small change on a massive scale, so which has the potential to completely change the world. Because then, as more people come together, there will be a greater source of abundance. Then as we come together, we will realize that there's more for everybody, and then people will take greater risk and tackle bigger problems, tackle the problems of contamination of the oceans, tackle the problems of like the depletion of the ozone, the melting of the polar caps. People will be motivated, and there will be the resources. It will be a collective resource to say, like, yes, we all see it. This is the problem. Here you go. Knock yourself out. And even we are not asking you for resources, for results. We're asking you to do it out of love. You might call me a dreamer, but I believe that when people do it out of love, they will be more successful, and we will be able to find the solutions that at this moment, through that narrow-minded perspective, we are not able to find.
Doing it out of love is the whole entrepreneurial spirit. Entrepreneurs solve problems. Entrepreneurs aren't like the ones who figure out how to play everybody else and get away with the cash. No, it's like that. We need entrepreneurs out there that have the true entrepreneurial spirit, because they make the greatest impact, because they're solving a problem that other people have. And you're discussing these global under these like fundamental problems, and I think it's those are the most important problems to tackle.
Which are the personal problems. So if you realize yourself, you're responsible for your being, your state of being. So that means that because you're responsible for your happiness, you are an entrepreneur in itself. That's the point, is that we are all entrepreneurs. There's not such a people that have more tendency. Yes, there's very intelligent people, like people like you, like you find ways to create wonderful things. But we are all in that sense, in one sense or another. I can come from another perspective and say, like, it's because you've taken down some blinders, man. I mean, you're perceiving and you have those powers. It's because less of your energy is going to maintain the blinders, and that energy is allowing you to diversify in so many things. Being so creative through music, through initiatives like a podcast, initiatives like being in a farm, being in working with your hands, the things that you create in sculpture.
Mm-hmm.
That's energy that is coming from somewhere else, and that somewhere else is because you're not investing it on the blinders.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you come up with this communication of to heart. So in a certain sense, we are responsible for our happiness, and we are responsible for ourselves. And because of that, we are entrepreneurs. We need to find ways in which we have to, we can be happy. So in order to do that, you need to take charge, be your own boss in that sense, and not put your responsibility. Because if we talk in business like manner, the difference between an entrepreneur and non-entrepreneur is the level of responsibility. If you graduate from here and you go work for a corporation, you realize that you're coming in there and most of the responsibility is already given. Basically, you will given with this amount of responsibilities, and as you go up, you will be given more responsibilities. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So it's about the level of responsibility, and then and it's secure, and that's what people like. Because if you go to a company or something like that, it's secure because the responsibilities lay out to you. You know that gradually you will be increasing responsibility if you want to grow, or if you don't want that much responsibility, you can remain at the level that you feel comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And that's what people like. But the difference between them and the entrepreneur is the entrepreneur takes all the responsibility. And it's all the responsibility, and it's even their own personal life at stake. Most of these people go in depth to realize something. So these people are like, it's the level of responsibility that they count that differentiates them from being one to the other side. But then we're coming to realize that these big corporations, because of that level of responsibility is so restricted, they're not able to see the full picture, and they're basically these corporations becoming these institutions that are unconscious and have not seen the full picture and the full impact of things. Mm-hmm. For example, the people that work for the corporate Monsanto, or the people that make Roundup and whatever that, mm-hmm. The chemists and these people, they're not bad people. They're not like the evil hunchback like a professor, that evil professor that's creating a Roundup to kill. No, they're not. I mean, these are nice people like you and me. They have they have families, they have feelings, and they have things, and they're trying to do certain things. But just because they're saying, okay, find out this chemical solution that is gonna try to solve this little problem. And because they feel they're solving a problem, they feel they're doing it with the right means. But they're not recognizing that by killing a certain weed, you're interfering with the ecology. These chemicals that you're putting are not really being processed, are going into our water streams, and they're creating havoc in many different areas. So because they're narrow-minded, again, they cannot see these perspectives. So again, that's where entrepreneurs are different. Once you're able to form a matrix of people that have their own autonomy, yet they're supported by this matrix of the support system, then they'll be freer, and they will feel more capable of dwelling into things that they before did not have the courage, and exploring full aspects of themselves, mm-hmm. and decide how far they want to go. you know. And I think that that's what's really gonna transform the world.
So I am responsible. I am responsible for my happiness. Well, I had some stuff written down, in case like we didn't, in case there were some blocks and we just weren't gonna like flow in conversation. So
it seems we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, we've done real good. The conversation's been flowing like water. Okay. So I was gonna, I want to bring this up. I just thought this was a something to bring up. Yeah, I went on your Facebook page because I felt like any good podcaster here, gotta do research, of course. And let me try to pull you up here. Just why you were talking earlier about kind of your life story. I was thinking of a quote that I saw you had on here. Oh, where is it? More views, timeline. Do you remember what it was? I'm not sure where it is on here. It was it had something to do with just following your life's path and being okay with the ups and the downs.
Mm-hmm.
Where is maybe that? I totally
wouldn't it be in the celebration bio? Where you
the celebration bio?
Or you saw it on Facebook?
I saw it on your Facebook page. It was like under quotes. Alright, that is weird. I guess I'm just showing here that I don't use Facebook all that much, which is kind of changing. I'm using Facebook a little bit more. Kind of see that it's like more like it's like the email of social media.
Mm-hmm.
There's like it's very like it's a tool.
Yeah, it's more like a tool. That's what I opened it like about a year ago. It's when I started again.
Okay, yeah,
I initiated it again.
Because I was gonna say like I know you. It's not, you don't have like a very active Facebook page, no. Which I think is totally like that's pretty normal.
And I'm very selective with the friends and things like that. People that really that I feel there is a bridge. There has been a communication bridge. I mean, a heart-to-heart bridge kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, yeah. So I know you believe in fostering community. Do you think Facebook creates community?
Well, I don't believe in many things, in most things, in anything, in a certain sense. But I do see that, again, we're talking about population. And one thing that is undeniable. Like you can argue against global warming. You can argue against science doing things, or governments coming to a point where they blow each other up with nuclear bombs, or a catastrophe. You can argue anything, but there's one thing that you cannot argue about, which is imminent. Is population growth. We're growing exponentially. I don't know, it's like 10 years ago there was like 4 billion people or 5 billion people in the world, and then it's like or not 10 years, maybe more like
Like 50 years or something.
Yeah, something like that. There was like the population keeps on growing exponentially, and as it grows, is evident that is there won't be any that much for all. You know, we're gonna come to a point of crisis where there's, you know, if we continue growing exponentially, even in the United States, and if you feel like, have you seen how crowded, like in our university, ever since you started, they just had to add 2 more dormitories or 4 more dormitories or something like that. You know, there's more and more people.
Yeah, coming into these hubs,
Yes.
these urban hubs.
Yeah, so we're coming to the point where and yet we don't know how to live with each other. We just barely tolerate each other.
It comes down to in living in a highly populated area, it's you tolerate people.
Yeah, it's just,
you know,
you don't connect with people anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't, and because in a certain way, it's because you're forced to that, to be in that state where you basically have to be, you know, looking for your, basically, again, the mentality of the survival of the fittest. You know, see which people you align so that you have better chances, so that, you know, with the people, you know, the group of people that you know, deal with, you know, as people that have certain influences, or, you know, so it's either by greed of having better options, or by just, you know, or just being a completely introvert and being just like shy and not with any interactive with anybody. So you come to those 2 extremes. So, but the point is that as we're growing exponentially, we're more and more forced to live with people, but yet we don't know how to live with people. So
it's like driving down the road, when somebody gets in your way on the road, it's like it becomes an issue. Yes. It's not, you're not just happy to see somebody, you know, you're not just like, oh, like, yeah, it's that guy driving down the road. We drive the same route to road. No, it's like, that guy's driving slow. Yeah. I'm behind him. I got to get to work. Yeah, it's something very, very like, this is something that we're learning to deal with. It seems like, to be in these like huge urban areas. And I mean, Asheville's small. Yeah. You know, and it's still like, you can still notice it happening to a certain degree. I came from out in Mills River, where, you know, I was living out in the countryside, and there's a different type of communication there. It's still here in Asheville, you know, we still have very friendly people, and it's all good, but being out in the countryside, like, that fosters that feeling of like wanting to connect with people. Yeah. Because we're social beings, but we also don't like having people driving slow in front of us. So.
Yeah, we want to connect. We do want to feel belong somewhere. We do want that, and it's like a very primitive instinct that we have towards that. Yet we don't know. We don't want to be vulnerable that much anymore. We don't want to risk giving too many people access to our intimacy or our little secrets, because we ourselves are afraid of them. So that's why in a community, that those boundaries start to dissolve naturally, or they have to dissolve in a certain way. You start living with other people, at the same time you're allowing them access to see you who you are, see you're not every time your best attire, you know, seeing you without like just walking up with like your face all swollen and you know, just like with eye crossed on, you know, crossed on your eyes and whatever, you know. So it's like that, you know. That's when it challenges us to really discover ourselves and really have that vulnerability to work into synchronizing with one another, really finding that, yes, there is the external encapsulated ego, which we have created around ourselves to protect and to deal in this society. But this thing, this protective shield doesn't have to be on all the time. And the more we allow it to dissolve, the better we will be able to connect with others. So tools like Facebook, if used in the right manner, I think they would be greatly beneficial because of their outreach. And because in a certain way, if you connect with with the people that you have um, the same inclinations, as far as like the inclinations of not just, of broadening your awareness, your perspectives, is very useful, because then you'll be like, for example, this guy is very much into technology, but he's opening up his boundaries to research, and he's always up to date of what are the latest um, um, developments in the technology level are. This other person is very, let's say, meditative, or yoga oriented. He goes to different places in yoga. So through that, you're also opening up to what they are posting, what they are contributing to you. So your expansion becomes even more and more possible as you engage with these people that have dedicated themselves to broaden their consciousness. But in the same sense as that's, I consider a beneficial aspect to others, the ones that are very narrow, that actually have worked themselves into only being solidified in one single perspective, then themselves, it creates the opposite effect. And people that kind of have like those belief systems kind of get together as well, and so. But I think there's more beneficial than negative aspects to it.
It's refreshing, because there's a lot of, there's both sides on it. There's good things about social media, and then there's also things that are a little bit hard for people to manage that come with social media. So I think it can become difficult in that way. But well, we should get back together sometime and talk about just like blockchain and
Yes.
Awareness Corp, and celebration.
Yes.
There's really so much
Yes.
to discuss here. I'm really hoping, it would be great if we could keep this up on like a weekly or 2 times a week type basis. I'm hoping to have some other people in here and relatively soon, and kind of talk with them. But I feel like talking with you, it's like a reminder of like what like heart to heart is really about. So maybe we could do some like 3-way conversations at some point. There's really so much we can do. There's an old friend of mine, Paige Neville, who is going to come in next Monday, and she graduated in May 2018, and she went to work for a democracy-based nonprofit. It's kind of like Democracy Now! The name escapes me, but it's like a democratic-based nonprofit. So she goes to do an internship with them right after she graduates, and she said the main point of the internship was to go and talk with people about how important voting is. And it was just voting, gotta vote. And she said she left the internship early, because she kind of had some realizations and realized like voting isn't most important. There's like fundamental changes that need to take place before voting will have the impact that we think it has now, but it really doesn't. Because voting is pushed on it. I think it's pushed on us in a way that's like, oh, you're not happy with how things are done here in the States? You didn't vote, so you can't complain. Or you did vote, but all your neighbors didn't vote. I don't know, it's this weird scapegoat. but anyway, I'm sure she'll be able to talk about, you know, her experience with all that much better than I just did. So yeah, that's like that's the next person I'm gonna be talking with, and yeah, so I think that should be great, and then yeah, just trying to keep it real, you know, heart to heart. Yeah, man. Yeah, let me see. I just had some notes on here about you know, blockchain and the student organizations. One thing though that I actually read on CNN yesterday, because I asked one of my management professors, Dr. Burris. I was like, I'm just not up to date on like politics or business news. She asked like what is the Dow, like the Dow Jones average, Dow Jones Industrial Average, and like no students in the management class knew what it was. And a management student or economic student of all types of students should know that. If you didn't know, it's the average stock price of the 30 largest blue chip publicly held corporations in the United States. I believe it's publicly held, but it's the 30 largest blue chip companies, and it's the average of those stocks. So it kind of gives you like an idea of like, oh, our economy is doing well right now. The Dow's up. We're not doing well. It's down. Yeah, I'm just gonna kind of like segue out of talking about whatever I was just talking about to oh yeah, because okay, I just got totally off topic there. Doctor, so I was like, I don't know politics, I don't know what's going on in the business right now. What do I do? And Dr. Burris was like, well, go on CNN and read on there. And then she gave me some names of economists who are like very active and know what's going on. And so I went on CNN, and the first thing I pulled up was talking about how the suicide rate in rural parts of the country are 45% higher than in urban places. So in rural places in the States, the suicide rate is 45% higher than in urban areas. And I think that kind of goes back to our discussion on purpose, because in a big way, our careers and our work is our purpose in life. And when that purpose is taken away from us, there's just this confusion that overcomes our like idea of self. And so the article thought it had to, the high suicide rate had a lot to do with the fact that farmers in rural areas, for one, are having trouble staying employed and having their farms, and also just finding good jobs in rural areas in general is harder and harder, because all the jobs are going into these urban hubs, you know, where technology and innovation and, you know, all this big city stuff is happening. And yeah, I mean, when you take away somebody's ability to like make a good career for themselves, then, you know, it's kind of taking away the purpose in their life. But I guess that could just yeah, I'm not sure if you have really anything else you wanted to talk about today. Do you?
Well, I mean, originally coming here, I didn't have anything to talk about. I don't feel like I ever have something to talk about, you know. It's just, again, by the situation that we create is where things, you know, the things happen, you know, by just things, and that's why I came here to university. Basically, it's just to create the opportunity to create those connections, those things, those possibilities, and explore them and let them take me wherever they need to be taken. Because I've then, as I said, as I was mentioned, telling when I was talking about, in a certain way, I've realized that very little. I mean, well, for once, that things are more beautiful when they happen by grace, when they just happen by chance. But also, there is an order, an incredible order of things, and how things, everything happens for a reason. It's just understanding that reason every season,
Mm-hmm.
That's something that Bob says. But the situation with, I just, when you were talking about the situation with the farmers and how the suicidal rate is bigger that's across the world, the whole parts of the world. Because, again, we realize that the individual has less value, that is more important the corporation or the big institution rather than the individual. And most of these people happen to be individuals that want to have, that they're, as we are geared towards one thing or another, they're geared towards, like my father, that was geared towards living in a farm and having that. And they were happy, very simple people, beautiful people.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's beautiful to be simple. Sometimes we think like, oh yeah, you have to be, get to know a lot of things and learn a lot of stuff and get to, have so many experiences. But having you come across the Quakers, the
Mormons?
The Mormons, they're beautiful people. It's beautiful to see how simple they live, how, and I don't think they have, I don't think they form part of that rate statistics. I don't think there's many Mormons or Quakers that commit suicide. I don't know. We would have to check that, but I'm just saying that it's just the clash. It's just that seems that the farmers and these people happen to be right in the middle of everything, where they're really not. They're too little to be considered important, and not willing to take part of this whole craziness. Because, for example, me going throughout the whole United States, I saw how what we call people in the rural areas or farmlands and things like that, these people are forced to go to a bank and get like these huge loans for like tractors and their machines, because one thing is that labor is very expensive. So because the labor is so expensive, they have to do everything. So they have to have good machinery that will allow them to cover greater areas. So they have to get into a lot of debt to buy these huge machines, this huge, pesticides and the seeds from Monsanto that are immune to certain plagues and things like that, because they cannot, because it's complex. Roundup, yeah.
Like that's like the huge thing with like how corn and
modified
wheat is grown.
Yes.
It's like they can just spray the entire crop with Roundup.
Yeah.
And the crop's fine, but everything else is demolished.
It's demolished, right? So these people are forced to be into this capitalistic, narrow-minded perspective of just get more to produce more and more is more and more. And then these people, of course, they happen to be, all they wanted was to have a little farm and have, a simple life. And then, they're forced to have this, and then they realize that in the middle of nowhere of something, and they're too simple to really take care of all this pressure that is being put upon them. So maybe that's why so many things happen. And there's really no support to them. I think that if we create something beautiful in which the individual is valued, and there is a support system that would allow them to be helped in many ways, like, yes, if you're a farmer and if you want to go the route of having a tractor or something, maybe somebody else can help you, with certain other aspects of your thing. opening it up for volunteering, for people to volunteer. There's this woofing and things like that. People are flying moving all over the world to volunteer for people that are doing the right thing. So instead of you having to fumigate with pesticides your whole crop, have a few volunteers from Germany or something to come and help you, and you give them the experience, and then you exchange with them, you expand your awareness, because for the most part, people that go on woofing, people that have expanded their perceptions, and then everything feed up to each other, and I think that as you expand your perceptions, you don't realize, there's less chances that you take that little ray gun and focus it on the negative, and because you focus it on that, there's less chances that because of you doing that, you end up seeing that the only option is suicide. I think that as you broaden your perspectives, you realize there's more things to do with that ray gun that just focus on the negative. You can focus it on the positive, or you can find something that truly motivates you and belong to the people that are creating beneficial change for themselves and for the world, but mainly for the world.
Yeah.
But
yeah. You're an incredible person. Like, it's really, I think you have a good influence on the people around you, and that's very clear, actually. So I hope I say that to like empower you on your journey.
Yes.
Like, you're on your journey right now. I'm like that. I'm that homie that hops out the door and I'm like, yo, you want like a cup of milk? Because I just milk my cow, and you look like you're on a journey. So you need some milk, keep you on the journey. But yeah, man.
I think what you're doing here is really wonderful, and I think that all these perspectives, how creative and diverse you use your energy, and it's really wonderful to see. Also, it's really empowering, and it impacts people. Like, for example, I know Alice and most of the people in all of the people in Celebration. I'm not saying most, just in a seclusion way. It's just like, I'm sure all of them, but I'm not sure really, how the degree, but they all perceive you to be this very fluent person that seeks different channels to expand and enrich people around it with this very pure intentions, and I think that's wonderful, and I think that would be a beautiful catalytic agent for these kinds of encounters, having that very sincere intention of just being the right homie that is gonna, as you said, give you that glass of milk, to continue empowering you wherever you're going. That's what it is, and I think that, yeah, it's beautiful, and I really appreciate, being this time with you.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful opportunity.
I wouldn't want to sit in this room with anybody else. It doesn't smell too bad. I'm kind of used to it, at least.
I just washed my hair this morning, so.
So you smell it.
Head
and shoulders.
Smelling like a wet wet mop because of my dreads.
Well, I guess you don't put soap.
I put like soap that has no chemicals, like Dr. Bronner's, things like that, But it takes a long time to dry. It's like you're walking around with a mop in your hand. But yeah.
Oh man.
So, yeah, brother. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and look forward for the next situation.
Yeah. Let's make it happen real soon.
Awesome.
All right, over and out. The Heart to Heart podcast, #1.